The school bus turned the corner as I stood behind the curtain, holding my breath. My eyes followed it until it disappeared at the end of the road. Only then did I let go of the thin white fabric. My hand stayed there for a moment longer, pressed against the glass like it could still feel her. Then I turned around and faced the silence of our home. I moved through the flat like a ghost, passing the same hallway, the same crooked picture frame, the same quiet kitchen. The clock ticked on the wall, and the smell of toast still hung in the air, but the place already felt empty. I sat down at the kitchen table and stared at my hands. They were rough and tired, not from age, but from too many years of working too hard and sleeping too little. I had raised her alone since the day she was born. I had done it without help, without family, and without rest. I cleaned other people's houses in the morning and packed boxes in a warehouse at night. I kept every receipt, every coin, every piece of proof that I was managing. I did it all for her, but what I never gave her was the truth. When I had her, I was only 17. There was no wedding, no father, and no support. The man disappeared faster than I could say his name. Shame came quickly after. In the hospital, when the nurse asked if I was the mother, I said no. I told her I was the sister. It was easier, cleaner, safer. That lie was the first, and it became the story I lived. To the world, I was her older sister. I dressed like one, spoke like one, and introduced myself as one. I told everyone that our mother had died young and left us behind. People believed it. They smiled and said how strong I was, how brave. They never knew the truth I carried every day, that the little girl holding my hand was not my sister. She was my daughter, my blood, my heart. She grew up believing what I told her. She called me by my name, not by what I was, and I answered every time, pretending it did not cut through me like glass. I cooked her meals, helped with homework, and sang to her when she had nightmares. I sat beside her at school plays and held her hand in hospital rooms, but I never said the words she deserved to hear. I never called myself her mother. Now she was 12, and the questions were coming. She started looking through old boxes. She asked about our mother. She noticed there were no photos, no old clothes, no letters, no memories. I had destroyed them all long ago, trying to protect us both from the weight of my mistake. At night, when the house was quiet, I lay in bed and stared at the ceiling. I thought about telling her. I imagined sitting her down and explaining everything. I saw her face, confused, shocked, maybe angry, maybe worse. Maybe she would never trust me again. That thought kept me silent. The fear of losing her was stronger than the guilt I felt. One morning while washing dishes, I dropped a plate. It hit the floor and shattered into pieces. I stared at it, my hands shaking, water still running. I realized I was close to breaking too. Keeping this secret was starting to change me. I was forgetting who I was, why I started the lie in the first place. Every time she asked a question, I added another brick to the wall between us. At school, she began writing stories about families. In one of them, the main character found out her mother was not who she thought. She showed it to me with pride, her eyes shining. I smiled and told her it was beautiful, but inside, my heart stopped. She was already guessing. She was already trying to understand something that I had never said out loud. Before we continue, I would love to know, where are you listening from? Which city, which country? Share it in the comments. And if you are enjoying this story, please subscribe to hear more every week. In the evenings, I watched her sleep. Her face was peaceful, but her body had started to change. She was growing into a young woman, and with that came curiosity. She was not a child anymore. Soon, she would find the truth on her own, and then the lie would not protect her. It would only hurt her more. I began to write a letter. I sat at the table after she went to bed and tried to put the truth on paper, but every time I started, my hand froze. What words could explain 12 years of silence? How could I write about a mistake that became a life? About a lie that became a home? Sometimes I would wake in the middle of the night and walk to her room. I would watch her sleep and whisper words she never heard. I would say I was sorry. I would say I loved her. I would say I was her mother. But in the morning, I went back to being her sister. That winter was colder than most. The pipes in the building froze twice, and I had to boil water to keep us warm. I wrapped her in blankets, cooked simple meals, and made her laugh when I could. But even laughter started to feel heavy. I was holding something too big to carry alone anymore. One Sunday afternoon, she found a photo I had missed. It was hidden in an old book at the back of the closet. It was a picture of me in a hospital bed, holding a newborn baby. My face looked young and afraid. Her eyes lit up when she saw it, and I watched her from the doorway, frozen. She looked at me, then back at the photo, then back at me again. That night, she said nothing, but I could feel the air between us changing. She had seen something she did not understand. Or maybe she did. Maybe part of her already knew. And maybe she was waiting for me to be brave enough to tell her. Halfway through that week, I sat in the kitchen with the photo in my hand. I looked at it for a long time, remembering the pain and the love. I thought about the day she was born, the first time she cried, the way she grabbed my finger and would not let go. I remembered every moment, and still, I had not told her the truth. Before I went to bed that night, I placed the photo on her desk. I did not say anything. I walked back to my room, turned off the light, and lay in the dark, listening for the sound of her voice. But the house stayed quiet. Half of me hoped she would ask in the morning. The other half was terrified that she would. Sometimes the silence feels safer than the truth, but the truth was no longer mine to keep. The next morning felt different. The light in the kitchen was softer and the air seemed heavier. I moved through my usual routine, but everything felt slower. My hands took longer to butter the toast. The tea did not taste the same. The photo was still on her desk, untouched, yet I could feel its weight in every corner of the flat. She came out of her room quietly. Her eyes met mine for only a second. Then she sat down and began eating. Not a word was spoken between us, but I noticed the way her fingers touched the photo later, gently, like it was something delicate, something sacred. She did not ask any questions. She only looked at it and then looked at me. That afternoon, I walked for hours after work. I left the cleaning job early and wandered the streets without direction. I passed a playground and saw children running, laughing, their mothers watching from benches. I stood there, watching them from a distance. I wondered if any of those women had secrets as heavy as mine, if they had ever felt invisible in the eyes of their own child. At home, I made soup. She came to the table, sat down, and ate in silence again. We were two people trapped inside a story neither one of us had the courage to open. I had built this silence. I had fed it with every lie. Every moment I said, "I am your sister," when I wanted to say, "I am your mother." Late that night, she knocked on my door. I was sitting in bed, holding an old letter I had written to myself years ago. A letter where I promised that one day I would tell her. That day had not come, until now. She stepped into my room and stood near the doorway. Her body was still, but her eyes were full of questions. She held the photo in one hand. For a long time she did not speak, and I did not move. Then she turned and walked away. I sat there, staring at the door she left open. My chest ached. The silence between us had changed. It was no longer protecting her. It was pushing her away. In the following days, she grew quieter, not cold, just distant. She stopped asking about our mother. She stopped writing family stories, but she began drawing. I would find sketches of two figures, one big, one small, walking together holding hands. No names, no faces, only outlines. But I recognized the shape of her questions in every line. One evening, I returned home from work to find her sitting at the kitchen table. She had fallen asleep on her books, her head resting on her arms. The photo was beside her, next to a drawing she had made of the same hospital scene. I stood in the doorway for a long time, my bag still on my shoulder, my hands still dirty from the warehouse. Then I walked over, picked up a blanket, and gently placed it over her. In that moment, I realized something. She was strong. She had lived inside a lie her whole life, but she had still grown into someone kind, curious, and thoughtful. Maybe the truth would hurt, but maybe it would also heal. That night, I wrote again, not a letter to her, but to myself. I wrote about the girl I had been, scared, young, alone. I wrote about the first time I held her, about the way she smelled, the way she opened her eyes and stared at me like she already knew I was hers. I wrote about the lies I told to protect us, and the truth I had buried so deeply that it now felt like another person's story. Writing helped, but it was not enough. On Friday, we passed a mother and daughter in the street. The woman was laughing and holding her daughter's hand as they walked past us. I glanced at Leah. She watched them for a few seconds, then turned her face away. That evening, I opened my wardrobe and took out a small box from the top shelf. Inside were 3 old photos I had not destroyed. One of me pregnant, one of her as a baby, asleep on my chest, and one of us both on her first birthday with a cake I had made from leftover bread and sugar. I placed the photos on her desk before she came home from school. Then I waited. She came into her room after dinner. I heard her stop. I heard the silence stretch longer than I could bear. I did not go to her. I did not speak. I sat in the kitchen, holding a cup of tea that had already gone cold. Hours passed. She did not come out. That night, I did not sleep. In the morning, the photos were gone from the desk. She had put them away, but she had not thrown them out. That afternoon, we walked to the park. She walked slightly behind me, then beside me. Still, she said nothing. But when we sat on the bench, she leaned her head on my shoulder. She stayed like that for a long time. Neither of us moved. It was not a question. It was not a demand. It was something more powerful. That evening, I opened my mouth to speak. I tried to begin, but no words came. Instead, I reached for her hand. She held it, and I let the tears fall. She did not pull away. She did not speak. But she stayed with me, and that was enough. The truth was there, between our fingers, in the way she sat beside me, in the quiet space she gave me. I had lied about everything, but I had not failed to love her. And somehow, in that silence, she knew. In the days that followed, small things began to change. She stopped calling me by my name. She avoided it, as if waiting for a new word to take its place. We cooked dinner together more often. She watched me more closely. There was softness in her silence now. Curiosity, yes, but also care. One evening she placed a small drawing on my pillow. It was of 2 women, one older, one younger, both smiling. Above it, she had written one word: us. I stood with the paper in my hand for a long time. That single word was louder than any conversation. It gave me a kind of permission, a path forward. So I began to tell her, slowly, carefully, a few minutes at a time. I told her about the night I went into labor alone, about the fear and the pain, about the tiny hospital room, about the way I chose her name, about the moment I held her and knew I would do anything to protect her. She listened, not with anger, but with wide, quiet eyes. She asked only one question: why I had lied for so long. I told her the truth, that I was afraid, that I thought love was not enough, that I wanted to be strong in the world's eyes, but I had been stronger when I was honest. She did not say much that night, but before bed she kissed me on the cheek and smiled. I had been her sister for 12 years. Now I was learning how to be her mother. For real. At last. It was spring when everything started to feel lighter. The cold had finally left the windows, and the air inside our flat no longer held the weight of unspoken things. Each morning still began with the school bus and the quiet kitchen, but something had shifted. The silence was no longer heavy. It was comfortable, like a pause between words that both people understood. Leah smiled more. She still said little about the truth I had shared, but her actions had changed. She stayed near me when I cooked. She asked about my day. She left notes on the fridge. Small drawings, tiny hearts. Her love had always been there, but now it felt returned, chosen, not forced by blood, but offered by choice. For the first time, I felt like I could breathe inside my own skin. I had spent so long hiding, building walls, trying to be everything and nothing all at once. But now I was simply her mother, and that was enough. One evening, we cleaned out the hallway closet. It was filled with boxes I had kept for years. Old school papers, broken shoes, things I had no time or space to sort. As we emptied the shelves, she found a notebook I had once used to track our expenses. Each page showed how close we had come to running out of money. But I had made it work. Every meal, every winter coat, every school trip. She looked at the pages in silence. Then she placed the notebook down and wrapped her arms around me. It was quiet and warm, and I held her as tightly as I could. It was the first time she had hugged me that way, as a daughter. Not because she needed something, but because she knew what I had done for her. I did not cry. I had cried too much over the years, but something inside me broke open in the best way. All those nights alone, all those moments of fear, they finally felt worth it. We began a new routine. Weekends became our time. We went to the library, the park, sometimes a small cafe if we could afford it. I stopped working night shifts. It meant less money, but more time. I wanted to be there, fully there, before she grew older and started needing me less. One afternoon, we sat in the park and watched the ducks on the water. The sky was soft, and her head rested against my shoulder. She asked me if I ever wished things had been different, if I had regrets. I thought for a long time before I answered. I told her that I wished I had been braver, that I had not let shame guide me for so long. But I did not regret her. Never her. I told her she was the best thing that had ever happened to me. She did not say anything after that, but she reached for my hand and held it all the way home. A few weeks later, she had a school project. The topic was family. She told me she wanted to write about us, about our story, not the one I had made up, but the real one. I sat across from her as she wrote. She asked me to fill in the blanks, the dates, the places, the small details that only I could remember. We laughed at how many things I had forgotten and cried at some of the things I remembered too well. Her report was simple, but full of heart. When she finished reading it aloud, I felt something rise inside me, pride and something else. Freedom. She ended the paper with one sentence. My mother loved me enough to lie, but now she loves me loud, and that is all I need. I kept that sentence close to my heart. Later that month, we took a photo together. It was nothing special. No perfect hair, no expensive clothes. Just the two of us in front of the window, smiling. I printed it and placed it on the shelf above the kitchen table. It was the first photo we ever displayed. Life did not suddenly become easy. Bills still came. The fridge was sometimes empty. I still walked to work when the buses were late, but the weight I carried was different now. Lighter, easier to hold. Leah grew more confident. She began talking about high school, about the subjects she wanted to study, the places she wanted to go. I encouraged her every step of the way. I told her she could be anything, do anything, because I believed it, and because I never wanted her to feel small the way I once had. On her 13th birthday, she made her own cake. She said she wanted to try, and I let her. It was messy, uneven, and perfect. After we cleaned up, she sat beside me on the couch and asked if I had ever thought about telling others the truth about her, about us. I paused. Then I said maybe, but only if she wanted to. She looked at me and nodded. That was enough. Together, we told her teacher first, then some close friends. Most people were surprised, but no one was cruel. Many of them were kind. They told us how strong we were, how close we seemed. Some even said they had guessed. But no one made us feel small. The lie had once been my shield, but now it was no longer needed. Our truth stood strong on its own. Years passed. Leah grew taller. Her voice changed. Her eyes stayed the same. Curious, deep, full of questions. She applied for college in another city. I helped her pack, trying not to show the way my heart ached. On the day she left, we stood at the train station together. She hugged me tightly and whispered something into my ear. She said, "You gave me everything." I watched the train pull away. I did not cry. I stood tall and proud. She was gone, but she was not far. Because love, when it is honest, never really leaves. Now when I sit at the window and drink my tea, I no longer feel the cold space that used to fill the room. I feel peace. I feel memory. I feel her. And I know, in the quiet moments, that I did not raise her perfectly, but I raised her with love. And now, at